Hello and welcome to another episode of 10 from the Couch, the show where we ask 10 questions to some of the most influential photographers and people in the photo industry. Today's guest, he's an incredible photographer, but what most people don't know, he also creates the most amazing drawings and paintings. At heart, he's a family man, he loves his Italian food and football, and if he's not stuck in customs, he's very active on social media. He calls himself an old-school gentleman explorer with really cool toys. Well, guess what? There's a little bit more to it than that. It's a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Trey Ratcliff. Hey Trey, how are you?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How is it going in New Zealand?
Good, it's a nice sunny day here in Queenstown. It's springtime here, and it's wonderful. I think I feel like I'm in heaven a lot of the time down here.
Well, I guess most people know New Zealand as the land of the elves and the hobbits. Now it's also the land of Trey Ratcliff.
Yes, it is. It is the land of Trey Ratcliff. Well, and speaking of elves, here's my daughter just ran to the door, and then now she's either running. She's running back to the main house. I'm out here in my little fortress of solitude. I kind of took over. We have a 2-bedroom cottage here on the property, and took this over as my studio. I thought I would have a little bit more peace and quiet, but every hour or so, one of the kids runs over for a little attention.
Well, that means that you get your cuddles too.
Yes.
Now, talking about being a child, age 10, 12, what was your big dream?
Well, when you're a kid, you dream big. I think a lot of people give that stuff up as the mediocrity of middle age hits them or whatever. You don't have to give up your dreams. But anyway, back then I think I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be in spaceships and exploring things and this and that. That's still very possible. It's a long life and there's lots of cool space exploration stuff going on. And so I haven't totally given up that dream. Of course, dreams fade away and new ones come in over time. But yeah, as a kid, of course, I was mesmerized by exploration of outer space.
Well, obviously your dreams were not too far-fetched because eventually you did end up at NASA.
Yes, so I was lucky enough to be invited to take pictures of a couple of space shuttle launches. NASA set me up in a really nice way, and I was able to get in close. I've destroyed many cameras that have been underneath the rocket blast, and I was within a few miles of some of the other launches. It was a great experience.
Now, if I remember correctly, it didn't all go as planned. Didn't you get your final shot with your backup camera?
Right. Well, it's a very high-pressure situation, and this is my first time shooting a space shuttle launch, or any rocket launch, really. And, I'm really not the kind of guy to be intimidated by all these old school veteran photographers that are all around. And I'm in this media place. We're sort of at this 3-mile safety zone, which is as close as they let humans really get. And so, the scene is, there are, hundreds of all these media guys with giant lenses all lined up on the edge of this lake. It's ridiculous looking in a way. And so I'm kind of there right in the middle of them all, and I've got my setup, and they're all trading war stories about some launch back in the mid '90s or the late '90s, and they're all talking about this, and how it is, how these guys are, and so anyway, I don't know anything, and they've all got their settings just right, and they're all this sort of thing, and I don't know. I've never shot a rocket launch. I figured it's going to be bright, like shooting into the sun. I don't take a lot of pictures like zoomed in on the sun, so I practice with that a little bit to play around with my f-stop and all that sort of thing. And so anyway, I've got 2 cameras. I got my giant camera, which at the time I used a D3X with a huge lens on there. I don't know, it's like a 300 millimeter prime or something like this. And then I had my backup camera, my D3S, which was on this sort of Chewbacca-like bandolier across my chest. And that had a 50 millimeter prime on it. So anyway, I start firing away when it goes up, and I'm shooting like a madman. Of course, I just got it kind of held down, and then the space shuttle goes off, and it gets about, I don't know how high, but it gets about halfway to this cloud cover, which is a low cloud cover, and then the D3X starts buffering. So it starts shooting really slow because it's having trouble writing to the card. So I thought, oh no, it's going real slow. It's too slow. So while that was going on, I thought, all right, I'll just let go of that camera. Then I picked up my D3S with the 50 millimeter prime and just started firing super fast as it shot up into the cloud cover. And then it was sort of accelerating as it went into the cloud cover. And there's this huge vortex of fire behind it. It looks like it's being like sucked up into the cloud, into this wormhole. And I happened to get it just right then, and it came out real nice.
Well, there you go. Always bring your backup camera.
Yes.
Now, from the boy who dreams of becoming an astronaut to the guy who works with NASA, at what point did you decide to become a photographer? And another point which I find absolutely fascinating, and some people might not be aware of, you grew up blind on one eye. How does that influence the way you see the world and, of course, your photography?
It's nothing too bad. You get used to it. You don't know anything else. And it turned out to be a tremendous advantage when it came to photography because, seeing the world in 2D is kind of awesome in a way because it turns out that people consume photography in 2D. We're all glued to our web browsers or whatever. Of course, your monitor or your laptop or your phone is a 2D viewing environment. So I've always liked the idea of communicating a 3D world on a 2D Cartesian plane. And I accidentally became an expert in this just in my own brain over my life. So as far as getting started in photography, I am 41 now. I didn't get my first serious DSLR until I was 35. So about 6 years ago was when I embarked in this world of photography.
So where in all of this does computer science and maths fit in?
I did graduate with computer science and math sort of as my background. And these two vectors ended up working together to help with the photography. One vector being only seeing in 2D, the other vector being an intense fascination with computer science and algorithms. And so when I got into photography, digital photography, I jumped right to digital, and I didn't do film or anything like that. I immediately started thinking about the manipulation of digital pixels in terms of algorithms. And I know everything a computer can do and can't do, and how you can bend the rules of light and code to your will. And so I found that whole idea of pixel and image manipulation to be wonderful. And I planned it all for the end goal so that it would get jacked right into your visual cortex in a fascinating way that's a little bit disruptive and unexpected and cool. And I found the idea of using tools on the computer to manipulate imagery just to be a really simply fun way to approach the whole sport. And I did all this completely independently by myself. I didn't take a photography class or read a book on photography or anything that stuff. Nothing. There's anything wrong with that. I never did it, and I shared all my experiences online, and I did it really for myself. And it turned out that a lot of other people were into this sort of thing too. Now looking back, it seems sort of obvious or some sort of a master plan. But 6 years ago, it wasn't at all obvious that there would be a big interest in digital manipulation of photography.
Now, since you were talking about processing, I think it's worth mentioning that you share a fair amount of tutorials on your website. So for everyone who is interested in how Trey does it, go to stuckincustoms.com. Now, Trey, after everything you've done and everything you've seen, I wonder, where do you find the next best idea, or what is the source of your inspiration?
Well, this idea about inspiration is always a slippery one. I think what I do is I try to have as much me time as I can in a day, in a week, in a month, so that I can just go off and explore without any real purpose or direction. I just take good music and have some loose destinations in mind. You don't even necessarily need to travel. You can just kind of jump into a car and go to a new area and just see what strikes you. And then over time, you end up just finding stuff. I don't know where this fount of inspiration comes, but I do notice that the more time I spend in this sort of right-brained drift, where I'm just exploring and trying out new things and experimenting with various kinds of art, more ideas and inspiration I get. So a lot of it comes from the inside. A lot of it also comes from external sources. So I hang out like on Google Plus, for example, and I see all kinds of great photos from other photographers or paintings or other pieces of art, and those inspire me or give me ideas. And actually, I often find that I'm attracted to photos that seem to have mistakes or mysteries in them that I can't quite figure out. I'm sure you're like me. A lot of people in your viewing audience are like me in that, you scroll through image after image after image through these streams all day long, and you see an image, you see a photo, and you're able to grok it in like 2 or 3 seconds. You understand what you're seeing in 2 or 3 seconds. And then you go to the next image, which is actually really kind of shocking that your brain can pretty much understand everything that's happening in an image in less than 5 seconds. But I find that the images that I hang out on for the longest time, like 10 or 20 or 30 seconds, which is a long time nowadays, frankly, are those images that have mistakes or things that I can't quite figure out. Not blatant mistakes that are awful, but I mean interesting mistakes, or maybe a mistake is the right word, where something seems out of place or unusual, or a shadow is weird or a shape is unexpected. These are the ones that I hang out on. And sometimes as my brain fills in these mysteries, it gives me ideas for my own photography. I think, oh, I kind of file that away. I think maybe if I can find like the mist or the fog or the light in this situation, I could do something like this, but put my own spin on it.
Now, you said once that you don't really see your work, but rather as play. At the same time, you're a very busy man. You get hundreds of emails to answer, and the whole business side of things has to be taken care of. So what are the percentages? How much time do you actually spend on the business side of things, and do you still have enough time to play?
Yeah, so I make sure that I have plenty of time for playing around with my images, which a lot of people might consider working on the images, but I don't think of it like that. To me, it's just great fun and experimentation. I would say, this is non-family time, but of the non-family time, I probably spend at least 60 or 70% of my time creating art. Then I would say I spend about 20% of my time in various social media channels, just sharing my work and answering questions and talking with the world. And then probably 10% of my time I spend, with the rest of my team at Stuck in Customs, doing business planning or answering emails or working on apps or all the various things that kind of keep the machine going.
So as we said, you're now living in New Zealand. Definitely a beautiful, beautiful place. But you've seen all corners of the world. Do you have a personal favorite, or is there any place you just didn't manage to go yet, but you can't wait to get there?
New Zealand is definitely right up there, if not my favorite. I wouldn't have moved here otherwise. Iceland is also wonderful. But I tend to like dramatic, unusual landscapes. I like all kinds of photography, but that's what I like the most, is unusual, dramatic landscapes. There are a ton of places that I still want to go. You would think, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to be a travel photographer. I've got 100 places I want to go before I die. And then, so you think you have this list of 100, and you start checking them off, and you think, oh, I've only got, 20 left. I better slow down or whatever. But that's actually not what happens. What happens is that the more you travel, the more you find out about these other little places that you just got to visit that are usually incredibly inconvenient to get to and require a lot of logistical planning. So now I'm convinced that it's a never-ending list. This is a good problem to have, of course. It's like having a pile of awesome books to read. And if you can't ever get through them, it's better than running out. So I don't know if I'll ever get to all the places I really want to go, but there's countless spots where I want to go all over Europe and Africa and Asia and South America, you name it, because it's been very nice that I've had all these. I don't really like to call them fans. I like to just call them, friends that I haven't gotten the chance to know yet. But they pop up with all these amazing suggestions and all these secret spots and these out of the way places that I've never heard of, and it's sort of a cool thing.
So the 10, 12-year-old Trey was dreaming of becoming an astronaut, and you ended up with NASA. So what is the next big dream? Do you have any projects that you can tell us about? Is there any people you would love to work with?
Yeah, I have a few grand arcs that I'm working on that I'm not ready to talk about yet. But there is one thing I'm going to try, and it is this. I'm actually in the middle of working on a presentation now for this thing called Google Zeitgeist, which is sort of like TED, but it's Google's TED. And they've got all these, heavy hitters that go to it or whatever. They've got like 400 C-level executives and in this sort of situation. And so anyway, I've been putting together my presentation, and they've got this ridiculous presentation set up where the screen is like 15,000 pixels wide, which, by the way, is not one of the default templates in Keynote. So anyway, I'm having to prepare this very custom presentation. And I thought, well, as long as I'm up there on stage, I'm just going to be very plain about it. And one of the slides I pop up, I'm going to pop up these photos that I took of spaceships that I'm really happy with, these NASA shots of the space shuttle or whatever. And I'll jump up there on stage and say, all right, this is a thinly veiled request for all you guys in the audience that have spaceships. And I'll say, I'm talking to you, Sergey and Branson and Bezos, all you guys that are building these private spaceships. I want to come take photos of the spaceships and the spaceports and, do something awesome. I don't do things for the money. I do it for the awesome. And so I think those would be kind of fun things to take photos of just for the experience of it.
Well, someone with your reputation and portfolio, I don't think it should be too hard to get in contact with Richard Branson, as example.
Well, I don't know. Maybe so. We have the same agent at CAA, and I've never really asked for an introduction or anything like that. It seems gauche in a few ways to ask certain things. So I don't try too hard or, and I'm always very sensitive to it because people are always asking me to do this and that. And depending on the way they ask, really there's a big, it has a big difference as to whether or not I say yes. I only have limited cycles in my life, just like I know these other guys do too. So there's an interesting mix between, wanting something too badly and being cool about it, or just being plain and upfront, or this sort of thing. And this is actually one thing I notice is I get all these emails, and people are very nice and well-meaning. And I notice one thing a lot of people do sometimes, which is unfortunate, because I don't ever get to read it. That's the point of this, is people send me these emails that are like 10 paragraphs. They're super long. And I just physically do not have time to read it. And I know they want something from me, which is fine. But I usually don't even mind if they just tell me what they want in like 2 sentences. And then, if I'm able to easily do it, I can say yes or no, but I just don't have time to like read this really long thing and then try to figure out what people are asking for and this sort of situation. So I'm sensitive to this whenever I would like to do something with other people that I also know are busy, because I don't want to be annoying and or aloof or anything. It's a sort of a tricky, subtle thing that I'm very sensitive to.
Well, I think you're doing just fine so far. I think you find that subtle but successful way.
Well, it seems to work okay. And the thing is also that famous people, they're just regular people, right? One nice thing, I guess, is that I don't really want anything from these people. I don't want money, or I don't want them to promote me, or I just probably admire them as an artist and just am I happy to hang out, just a couple of dudes being dudes, or whatever it is. And so that's sort of a nice thing, is that you don't have any modus operandi, or there's no quid pro quo, or anything like that. You just, I think once you reach a certain level, that you no longer do things for money or anything. You do things for awesome. And on occasion, you can get together with somebody else and be more awesome together than you can be on your own. And that's kind of a nice thing too.
Being awesome together. I like it. Now, talking about awesome, throughout the interview, we've already looked at a lot of your images without the time to comment on it. But I selected 3 images where I'd love to pick your brain. The first one is an HDR image, very stylish, but also with a personal note. The supersized Christmas tree and 3 beautiful children.
Yeah, those are like my stunt children that I put together for that photo. No, those are my real kids, and there's 3. The third one is kind of hard to see because she's inside of a stocking. She was a baby then. So anyway, I thought, well, I want to do something Norman Rockwell-esque, but sort of neo-Rockwell-esque. And I had an idea for this situation, and this one is definitely an HDR photo, but I have my own take on HDR, I think. It's not straight up HDR, it just sort of informs one of the canvas layers that eventuates into a final work. And, like you said, a lot of people know me as the HDR guy or whatever. That's fine. I think once people get in there and explore the work more, get to know me, they see that I like all kinds of photography. And not that I'm good at all kinds of photography, but I do enjoy it all. And occasionally I have successes or whatever. But yeah, I think the reason that most people know me is just like this one bullet point guy is because people are busy and they only have time to kind of categorize people very quickly and then move on to other people in their life they're trying to keep track of. And if that kind of, gets them in the door, gets them interested, that's fine. And then maybe as they hang out more, they'll see there's more to it. And that's just sort of my artistic side speaking. And then I don't think any artist likes to be fully pigeonholed. But it is what it is. And as far as that photo goes, I'm still happy with it.
Now to the next image, the National Center for the Performing Arts in Beijing, China, the Chinese mothership. Some people might think, oh, look, it's a nice building, let's go there, snap. It's not that simple.
Depending on the kind of person you are, you can say, oh, that shot's not that hard. And in a lot of ways, it's not that hard because it's just an awesome building. And there is sort of waiting for the right time of night. The building looks different from every angle. In some places there's reflections, in some places there's not. It looks different at every time of day. Everything from morning to the middle of the day till the deep part of night. And then so there's just sort of this decision matrix. You take photos at all these various times, but you really only kind of want to publish one, at least of this particular angle and style and time of night. So there's that whole decision process that I go through about which one to post. And this one is also HDR. I love night photography HDR because it's just different than it is when you're there, because your eye does not act like a camera at night. So that's always my challenge when it comes to post-processing these night shots of architecture. And I occasionally have successes and well-executed shots, and I feel like this one was one of them. But of course, what people don't see are the thousands of poorly executed shots that I never publish.
Now, the third image I picked for two specific reasons. A, I want to get away from this crazy notion that you're just the HDR photographer. And B, to show the variety of your work. With the mothership, we had architecture, deep tones, reflections, HDR. In this case, we have human beings, we have mood, we have this underlying feeling of craziness.
Yeah, so people at Burning Man are very comfortable with their own sense of self-expression, whether or not they're in any sort of questionably illegal substances. And these, I think part of being a photographer is just getting yourself in interesting situations and putting yourself into a target-rich environment, not really knowing what you're going to get. And this is actually a fairly uncomfortable thing. And I find that, the more you become comfortable in unknown situations, the more shots you end up getting. Of course, being a human, you tend not to put yourself into unknown situations because it's unsafe, or your body and your mind and your soul tend to not want to enter the unknown. It's sort of a self-preservation type thing. But what I've really done throughout my whole life, and especially now as a photographer, is thrust myself into the unknown. And often when you're into the unknown, they can be these target-rich environments, like Burning Man. And so there's always something interesting happening, people dressed up, people very comfortable with their own self-expression, great art, cool environment. And so just simply by being in these unknown situations, you can increase your hit rate of interesting photos.
So from the images to the company, tell us about stuckincustoms.com and also the amazing apps that you guys have.
So stuckincustoms.com is sort of the motherlode of my internet self. I exist various other places on the internet too, but I like to essentially keep that as my centerpiece. And we do all kinds of activities there. We have a good team that helps us out. This is, I founded it many years ago just by myself, and since then we've added together a really nice team. We have about a dozen people, full-time and part-time, and we do all sorts of things there. But one of the things you mentioned in particular was apps. We do build several different apps. We notice we have two kinds of main audience members. One is just fans, people that are not really photographers, but people that enjoy it. So we make a class of apps for them. And then the other group is people that are photographers, or at least people that like to take photos that may not even necessarily call themselves photographers. This is one of the biggest growing groups of people out there. And so people that already take photos, that want to take better photos, or want to learn new techniques, or this sort of thing, we have not only apps for them, but we also have a number of videos and ebooks and all sorts of things for people that want to hone their craft.
Now, I believe you also released a whole set of presets for Lightroom on Stackin Customs not too long ago.
Yes, so we released something which is sort of vaingloriously and uncreatively named Trey's Lightroom presets. And what's been sort of amazing about those is I thought, well, a lot of people email me on occasion and say, hey, you should release some presets. I was like, no, I can't imagine they'd be that interesting to people. But man, they have just gone crazy. We've had like thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads of these things. And I have about 1,000 presets that I've made, and I decided to release, 60 or 70 of my favorite, or something like this. Golly, they've just gone crazy. It's been a real surprise.
So we talked a lot about the awesomeness of photography and your work. Now, the difference between taking pictures and actually making a living as a photographer, of course, is that little thing in between called money. How do you make money? How do you work for clients, or do you just run your own projects? Do you have an agent? What do you do to feed your children?
And my little girls eat. Man, they eat like something fierce. Anyway, no, I don't have an agent that hooks me up with this sort of situation with clients and stuff. In fact, I don't have any clients. I never have. Not that there's anything wrong with clients. I just decided not to go with that model. My agent really mostly deals with speaking engagements, which I do rarely, but on occasion I'll do it. So she handles that situation. But I don't have, since I don't have clients, it completely changes the way I operate my business. Whenever I take a photo, I go take it because I want to take it, not because it's for a client in particular. Like even the NASA photo or whatever, I didn't take it for NASA. I took it for myself. I have all the rights to it and this kind of thing. I will go collaborate with people, or people invite me to really cool situations, and most of the time I don't charge them or anything like that. I just say, well, look, if you want to use the photo, you can, but I can also use it. It's my photo too. That's rare though when that happens. That's only when you want to get in some place that's private and awesome that the public doesn't have access to. You have to work out those kind of deals. But those are more the exception than the rule. And we just have, as far as I can tell, I'm sort of an anomaly when it comes to this business model. And I don't really advise it to people because I think people should get clients that pay for them to travel places or pay for them to take photos of a certain subject matter, because I think that's probably a more predictable and better business model for photographers.
So let's swing over to social media for a moment. You have gazillions of followers on Google+. You're very, very popular on Pinterest. Your images have been viewed millions and millions of times, crazy numbers. So you've sort of slid into this role of this new guru of social media. How important is social media for us photographers?
Yes, well, first of all, you should know that I would never call myself a social media guru or an expert or anything like that. And people should be immediately suspicious of anybody that would hoist such a redonkulous, vainglorious title upon themselves. I do love social media, and I kind of find it's my way to connect with the world, because social media is just basically one giant refrigerator that little kids can tape up their art to. And I think I've got my kids, and they create art, and they on construction paper, little houses with flower boxes and glitter glue and all this stuff, and they create it and they run around the house and they show everybody. There's no ego involved at all especially when you're a kid. You just kind of want people to see it. And I think the same way about social media. I create stuff and I just like it when people see it. It just makes me feel good. And it's interesting, actually. There's two vectors at work. One of them is like, oh, I love this piece. I don't care if anyone likes it or not. Sort of like this bitter art student emo feeling, right? Like, oh, this is an important piece to me. I don't care if the world doesn't understand it. It's meaningful to me. And then the other half, and that's a very strong part of me. The other half of me is like, oh God, I hope people like it. I'd be devastated if it doesn't get many views or likes or whatever. So anyway, both of these things are very strong, but they're totally opposite. And I guess that's okay, thinking about it, that as long as no one is any stronger than the other, that I guess it means you're kind of balanced.
So, for any new photographer, anyone that thinks of becoming pro or just wants to pick up a camera, what would be your number one advice?
I guess my biggest advice is don't listen to anybody, right? Don't even listen to me. Just, find what is interesting and unique inside of you and iterate on it. Don't, well, you can listen to me, I guess, because I'm giving you truly objective advice. And I'm not, I don't make any money by telling photographers how to get rich or any of that stuff. So in a lot of ways, this is very pure advice that I find a lot of people try too hard to find experts or listen to experts and follow everything they say. And a lot of times there's confusing motivations and all this kind of stuff. But really, I think that if you're interested in photography, obviously you are, otherwise you wouldn't be getting into it, that inside you already know what is beautiful and unique, or you might have hints of it. You may not have it completely figured out yet, but you'll have some hints as to that truth. And just keep iterating on that and, find your own space and, get to know the tools well enough that you can express your own personality through your art. But after you learn the workmanship side of how to use these tools and, how to physically use your camera, then the rest is up to you. And I think you should spiral off and do something very much on your own. And at some point, you have to stop listening to other photographers and just listen to yourself.
Do not listen to advice. Love it. Hey, Trey, thank you so much for your time. I know what a busy schedule you have. I really appreciate you talking to us, coming to us across the Tasman.
Sure thing, no problem.
And for everyone at home, everyone watching, thank you very much. I hope to see you next time. And as we say in Switzerland, danke fürs Zuschauen und bis bald.